Today we're going to take a look at the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending situation. Will they sign Jack Campbell? Who are some replacements? Can they even afford to replace Campbell with some of the trade targets that have been mentioned in the rumor mill? Plus, we're going to take a long look at the Boston Bruins. They have a lot of question marks facing them this coming offseason. Could we see a return of David Krejci? What will Patrice Bergeron decide to do? What other moves might they make? We'll discuss the latest on the Bruins. Plus, we have some signings to discuss, some updates from around the NHL when it comes to some coaching and GM vacancies, and of course we'll recap last night's playoff action. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss today. First up, let's take a look at last night's playoff action, or should I say yesterday afternoon, as the game was on early between the Lightning and the Rangers. The Tampa Bay Lightning win the game 3-2 to find themselves back in this series. I know a lot of people start to write the Lightning off early because after being down 2-0, they go into game 3 and they get down into game 2-0 early on after getting themselves into some penalty trouble. The Rangers went to work on the power play, made them pay for it. It was Zibanejad and Kreider both putting up power play goals. That power play has been clicking at a very high successful rate, and the Lightning are going to have to watch that throughout the rest of the series if they have any hope to come back and complete a win. That's much we know for sure. But of course, we know the Lightning, you can't really write them off. They slowly battled back after that. And made the most of their moments. Ended up scoring on a late goal. Ondrej Palat with 41 seconds to go on a beautiful pass from Nikita Kucherov. It was just a great goal. It was a really quick release, which is what you got to do to be able to beat Igor Shesterkin. The Lightning were certainly trying to get in Shesterkin's kitchen a little bit more, create some more traffic. There was a few bumps, nothing too serious. And obviously, I know the Rangers weren't happy with that. Gerard Gallant did have some post-game comments saying they intended to talk to the refereeing supervisor before the next game. I'm not really sure why, to be honest, because I understand they may not like the goalie being bumped, but at the same time, they were called for it. I think the referees handled it well. And, the Rangers took advantage of their power play situation. So, as much as they may not like the play or what the Lightning are trying to do, you got to understand, same thing with Vasilevsky. They're the two best goalies in the world right now. If they can't take away their eyes and try to, kind of get in their face a little bit, they're not going to stand a chance to score. And if they do make contact or they do anything that crosses the line, then they should be called. And in the case of the Lightning, they were. So, like I said, the Rangers took advantage too. So, we'll see what happens. It should be interesting. I know, like I said, you can never count the Lightning out. They know how to win. They know how to come back. And now that they have some momentum, if they take Game 4 at home to tie things up tomorrow night, then it's anybody's series. And I really think the Lightning might almost at that point be somewhat in control. But going back to MSG won't be easy either. The Rangers have been super tough to beat on home ice here throughout these playoffs. So we'll see how things go. Of course, tonight we have the Oilers and Avalanche, with the Oilers trying to avoid a sweep here in Game 4. The Avalanche trying to close things out and qualify for the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, first time that they would make that in a long time. But they certainly are battling some injuries. Of course, we know Samuel Girard has already been out for some time, is done for the playoffs. Sounds like Nazem Kadri more than likely is done. Apparently, he's been sent back to Denver to get checked out further to see if he might require surgery on his injury. I don't know if it's his hand, his arm. It's something in that area for sure. And it's a serious injury, which will keep him out for sure the rest of the series. And if he needs surgery, it'll be pretty much a guarantee that he wouldn't be available, unfortunately, in the Stanley Cup Final. And we're still waiting on Darcy Kuemper to make his return. At least it sounds like there's a better chance he could return throughout the playoffs. But it's not clear as of when. It looks like Francouz is going tonight. Again, Dylan Holloway expected to make his NHL debut for the Edmonton Oilers in replace of the suspended Evander Kane. Of course, Brad Malone was inserted into the lineup in Game 3, replacing an injured Yamamoto, and now Holloway comes in and replace Kane. So hopefully the kid can get a good experience here, but at the same time, hopefully he can help the team because it's a lot of pressure to be facing for your first NHL affair. I would be willing to bet that Connor McDavid is going to play an absolute ton tonight. Wouldn't be surprised if he passes even 35 minutes in regulation, especially if it's a tight game and into the third period the Oilers are either tied or trailing in any fashion. Then they'll be pushing and throwing everything out they can at the Avalanche to try to extend the series. Now, on to some other news here today. The Montreal Canadiens announced that they've signed defenseman Chris Wideman to a 2-year extension, just a little bit above league minimum. 1 year at $750, the second year's at $775, averaging things out for cap purposes at $762.5 thousand. He put up 27 points last year in 64 games upon making his return to the NHL. Of course, he did play 1 year before that in the KHL after running out of NHL opportunities for a little while, but he certainly went over to Russia and made the best of it. He was the defenseman of the year over there in the KHL 2 years ago, put up some solid numbers, got a chance to go back to Montreal last year on a 1 year league minimum basically contract, and now he gets extended. So be interesting to see what else the Habs do. They have had so many young defensemen be ready to have NHL action here, especially where Wideman's a right-handed defenseman. I wonder, they have Petrie, they have Savard, they have Wideman, they have Barron. That's a lot of defensemen. I don't know how many young guys they want in their lineup or how many they want to kind of have maybe as your extras that can kind of go back and forth between NHL, AHL, depending on injuries and stuff. So we'll see, but I do wonder if that'll have any impact on the future of Jeff Petrie. But obviously finding a trade for him is a possibility, but not a given, especially given his contract. Dallas Stars also announced today that they have a signing as well for a prospect, a left winger from the Czech Republic, Matej Blumel. I believe I'm saying that right. I apologize if it's not. 22 years old. Originally drafted by the Oilers back in 2019, but he was one of those players who did not sign with his original drafting team, and the rights expired, and he became a UFA. So he's now a part of the Dallas Stars organization. Now, a couple names here too on the coaching carousel and GMs for some updates. One in the 32 Thoughts podcast that came out this morning, Elliot Friedman was talking about the San Jose Sharks vacancy for general manager and mentions the name of Mike Greer as a potential candidate. Now, we know one other guy that's been mentioned before is Ray Whitney. Of course, Mike Greer, like Ray Whitney, is a former NHL player who spent some time playing with the Sharks organization. He's currently employed by the New York Rangers. Not long after Chris Drury last year was named the new general manager of the Blue Shirts, he hired Greer to be a hockey operations advisor. So we'll see what the future holds there, but obviously it sounds like the Sharks, based on what Friedman is saying, would not necessarily, doesn't sound like it has to be a for sure thing, but it almost sounds like they prefer somebody who's connected to the organization from the past, somebody who's familiar with things. So Whitney and Greer certainly fit that criteria. So we'll see where things go on that front. And when it comes to coaching, we know that the Winnipeg Jets, of course, are one of the big teams that gets talked about a lot, waiting on the future of Barry Trotz. We've heard, of course, Scott Arniel's name mentioned. We've heard Rick Tocchet, Jim Montgomery, just to say a few others. Apparently there is a longer list too. There's some other names that they are starting to expand their search here a bit. So we'll see as they talk to other people while they wait on Barry Trotz, what they decide to do. And another name that we don't know yet, and it's not that there's really any news, but the fact that there's no news, it almost becomes news, is that Florida Panthers have still not made a decision yet on Andrew Brunette. Of course, he was took over last year early in the season from Joe Quenneville, who was let go because of the whole connection to Chicago and the whole controversial situation there with Kyle Beach. And Brunette was named interim head coach. He's a finalist for the Jack Adams Award. The Florida Panthers were the NHL's top regular season team. Yes, they had an earlier than expected and probably planned exit from the playoffs, and I'm sure that didn't go over well with upper management and ownership, but at the same time, the guy did a lot of good things this year, and to me, the longer this drags on, almost makes me think that there's a better chance that they might make a change. I mean, to me, for a guy who, if you don't look at how the playoffs ended and you just look at everything else, he did a fantastic job. So to me, before that, it was looking like a no-brainer that he would get the interim tag removed and get a new contract for head coach. Now, just the fact that not only that they lost, but how they lost, makes you wonder. And the fact that this is dragging on so long makes you think they're thinking long and hard about it, and perhaps they are considering making a change. They'd be obviously one of many teams in the mix there to get a new coach if they do decide to go down that road. Now, when it comes to the rumor mill today, first up, let's look at the Maple Leafs. Reports from TSN, of course, and Chris Johnston mentioned back, it's been probably 4 or 5 days ago, which I had mentioned about the fact of Jack Campbell's future being very uncertain. Now, there's been a variety of reports from different media outlets and reporters on Jack Campbell, but as far as we know, there's been no contract negotiations at all since the season has ended. It's believed Campbell's looking for a $5 million contract. Ideally, I would say, based on what we've heard, anywhere from 3 to 5 years, probably 4 or 5 years would be preferred by Campbell. At this point, he hasn't made a ton of money. He's a late blooming goaltender who's probably looking for as much job security and money that he can make. It's probably his real, maybe not his last chance, but depending on how long he signs for, it could be one of his last chances to really cash in and really earn, big money while he's playing at a higher level here. So he's got to make a careful decision. Now, I've seen a lot of people online talking about the fact that, well, if the Leafs can't afford to pay Campbell his $5 million that he wants, and honestly, that would be challenging for them given their cap situation. The argument is, well, if they can't do that, how is it that they're going to make a trade and they're going to get John Gibson, who's making more than that? Or maybe another name's been mentioned as potential candidate is Varlamov in the New York Islanders organization. And another name that I come across that I just wonder, there's been no reports or rumors linking them, but there has been some talk about Jake Muzzin in LA if they just decided to try to save some money by moving Muzzin. What about Jonathan Quick? I mean, I know that he played really well this year, and the Kings don't necessarily have a big reason to want to move him, but he is getting older. He's in the final year of his contract going into it this fall, and they have Cal Peterson signed to a 3-year deal at $5 million, which is the comparable that guys like Campbell are looking at, right? So this is why the $5 million number comes up on him. And I just wonder, do they want to have, and it's only 1 year, but do they want to have over $10 million tied up in goaltending this year? They don't really have a big cap problem, but we do know that the Kings ideally have been rumored to want to add a left shot defenseman, so a guy like Muzzin kind of fits the bill, so to speak, and possibly another top 9, top 6 forward who can pitch in with some more offense too. So that's not going to come cheap. And that might prove difficult. So I just kind of wondered if Quick might be a guy that might be on the radar because it's a veteran who's still playing good. He doesn't have trade protection in his contract, so the Kings can trade him if they so feel it's what they want to do, and it's not a long-term commitment for the Leafs. So I kind of wondered about that, but we'll see. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have any connection there, but the fact there's been all this talk about Muzzin to LA, could there be an involvement of a goalie? Now, but here's my argument to people saying that how can they trade for a goalie making as much or more than what Campbell wants if they can't afford Campbell? And it's simple. Money is going to be going out in a trade. Right now, if they sign Campbell, nothing else moves. They would be kind of forced to shave money off the cap by trading a player out, possibly for a low return to save the money. It's just that simple. But if they're going to make a trade for a goalie, of course, they have to give up something of value. They would probably have to negotiate at least one decent roster contract to go along in that deal to level things out. So if they acquired John Gibson, could it be like, obviously we could be talking about a first-round pick being included, maybe a prospect like a Nick Robertson. Could they move a guy like Alex Kerfoot or something to that effect? That would be something that you would see included so that they would free up the space to make it happen. So it's certainly possible, but honestly, I do wonder about Quick if there's any kind of connection there. But obviously, Gibson comes with longer term, longer stability. A guy like Varlamov is down to 1 year of his contract too. Not really sure what the Leafs would prefer in that case. If they can't keep Campbell, do they want short term to kind of reevaluate, or do they want a guy like Gibson who might be the answer to their questions and not have to deal with this again for an extended time? Hard to say, but let me know what your thoughts are on the Leafs goaltending moving forward. Now, on to the Bruins. Lots of question marks on the Bruins. Of course, Patrice Bergeron won the Selke Trophy for the 5th time. It was revealed he had elbow surgery. He's out 10 to 12 weeks, So that just adds to a long list of ailing Bruins who had surgery and is going to be out for an extended time, at least in the case of Bergeron. If he does decide to play next year, he should be healed up and ready to go for the start of the year, which is something that most of the other injured Bruins cannot say. A couple of articles here, one from Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic and one from Joe Haggerty of Boston Hockey Now, indicate that like in Fluto's article in The Athletic, he says that even with all the injuries, the Bruins should still definitely try to consider trading a defenseman like a Matt Grzelcyk or Mike Riley to free up some extra money to put into the center position, because certainly it's an area that they're not going to be deep in anymore, especially if Bergeron does not return. Now, he also goes on to talk about the possibility that if Bergeron doesn't return, would Mark Scheifele be a name they'll consider out of Winnipeg? Now, I know we heard Kevin Cheveldayoff indicate that he expects Scheifele to be there for training camp and doesn't, expects him to be part of the team next year. But all we know, and the only thing that would be based on, would be the fact that Scheifele has not officially requested a trade. He felt that obviously his exit meeting went well, and that's good and all. But at the same time, doesn't mean that a deal couldn't come along that the Jets really liked and they still might pull the trigger. Like, you really can't base any of those comments on really anything concrete. Now, I'm not sure what the Boston Bruins would offer Winnipeg if they considered doing a Mark Scheifele trade. They're not exactly super deep in prospects besides Fabian Lysell, who I'm sure Winnipeg would be very interested in, but I'm not sure that really would be wise for Boston to consider trading the young player who looks like he could be a real dynamic player on their hands. So they might want to be careful with that one. But, obviously that could be something that it would make sense for the Bruins to look into if Bergeron decides not to return. Obviously, Scheifele's got a couple years left. Similar money that Bergeron used to make. It can give you a lot of offense, comparable numbers. He's not the two-way player that Bergeron is, but at least offensively, he can give you that spark that you might be needing. Now, in the case of the Boston Hockey Now article, it does talk about a potential David Krejci return, and this is certainly based on what we've seen out of David Krejci himself. I mean, David Pastrnak and he got to play together at the World Championships over in Finland. David Pastrnak had posted a video teasing him, basically walking through the streets, kind of asking him if he was coming back to Boston, trying to kind of tease a return, but of course he wouldn't really say much on camera. And then, of course, he himself posted himself on social media indicating that the Krejci and his family are returning to the United States for the summer, and certainly said that he's planning to calmly think about what to do next. Don Sweeney was previously asked as well if there's been more communication with Krejci. He said not recently, but that they had kept up periodically throughout the season. So I wouldn't completely rule out a David Krejci return. And so, can you imagine what if Krejci comes back and they somehow manage to trade for a guy like Scheifele? If Bergeron's not there, at least that's not a terrible top two centers. I mean, it's certainly better than considering about maybe having Eric Howlett and Charlie Coyle being in that role. Your blue line's going to be decimated to start the year with no McAvoy, no Grzelcyk, possibly no Riley. Brad Marchand, because of the hip surgery, I know they said 6 months, but those hip surgeries are real big recoveries, and it could be longer. It wouldn't be shocking if it turns out to be longer. And even if he does return around the 6 month mark, it's probably going to be a while, a few more months after that, before he has any chance to be Brad Marchand, the old Marchand, on the ice. Will he even get back to that? I'm not saying he won't be, but I'm just saying that hip surgeries are incredibly hard on you, and a lot of players don't come back to the same level. I mean, sometimes you can extend your career, but it's hard to say with any kind of certainty. We'll have to wait and see. Will he be as effective? Will he be the same guy he was before surgery? Only time will tell. It could be an interesting year for the Boston Bruins. Like I said, we could see a return of an old familiar face. We could see a longtime legend retire. We could see a significant trade, or maybe we see a combination of things not go that way, and maybe the Bruins really take a step back next year because they're just depleted by injuries. I know somebody was saying it was their worst nightmare to see the Bruins have a one bad season and maybe be in a lottery next year for Connor Bedard. Can you imagine? Because I wouldn't think Boston would be taking a step back longer term. Next year could be an anomaly for them because of the injuries. And you imagine if they got lucky like that, that would be insane. But we'll see where things go. Let me know what you think the Bruins are going to do down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.